He cupped my face in his hands, and for one moment, it felt completely safe. And then I remembered that my cousin, my best friend, the person I love more than almost anyone in the world, was asleep in a room right next to us. That memory has lived in my chest ever since. Heavy, quiet, unmovable. Let me tell you how we got there. Gemma and I grew up as sisters in every way that mattered. Neither of us had one by blood. I have no siblings. She has one older brother. So from the very beginning, we found each other. We bonded. We told each other everything. And over the years, we became inseparable. The kind of close where you don't need to explain yourself, you just call. Even after she moved a few states away, that never changed. Constant texts, long phone calls, knowing every detail of each other's lives. That's exactly why this story is so hard to tell. Gemma married her husband, I'll call him Justin, and for most of my life, I looked up to what they had. They got together when she was 14 and he was 16. Childhood sweethearts. They always seemed happy. Then their daughter was born 3 years ago. And things changed. They were sleeping less. Every conversation became about responsibilities instead of each other. Gemma expected the adjustment. She'd always wanted to be a mother, and she loved it completely. Justin wasn't prepared. He started drinking more often to manage the stress. What began as a way to relax became a habit, then an addiction. Gemma told me everything. He'd stay up late drinking, blast music in the middle of the night, spend hours hiding in the bathroom, get irritated whenever she asked for help. She told me he had become a completely different person than the man she married. Then she found out he'd been cheating. Not once, multiple times. Every time she called me crying, I hated him a little more. I couldn't understand how someone could treat the mother of his child that way. Someone who had stood by him for over a decade. So trust me. If you had told me then what I was about to do, I would have laughed. 2 years ago, they separated. Justin moved back to his home state. Gemma stayed where she was with their daughter. A few months after, I went to visit her, and Justin happened to be there to spend time with their daughter. At first, nothing happened. I barely paid attention to him. But during that visit, we started talking more than we ever had before. We liked the same music, watched the same movies, had similar hobbies. We could talk for hours without running out of things to say. One night, we stayed up past midnight. It wasn't flirtatious. It just felt easy. He told me he was surprised by me. That I'd grown up from being Gemma's annoying little cousin. I'd known him since I was around 7 or 8 years old. We drove out and he bought me a drink from a gas station, a strong strawberry Mike's Harder, because he knew I liked sweet things. I'd never really been drunk before. Looking back, it probably wasn't the smartest decision for either of us. We sat outside and talked for hours. It started casual, then became personal. Childhoods, family, traumas we'd never really shared with other people. He told me he was proud of me, said he'd watched me grow up over the years, and that I'd turned into a beautiful young woman. I felt embarrassed and flattered at the same time. I didn't take it as flirting. I genuinely thought he was just being supportive, brotherly. At one point, I was crying about something from my childhood, and he hugged me. He told me I was family, that Gemma loves me so much, that if I ever needed anything, he would always be there. I walked away from that conversation feeling comforted. The next day at the beach was when I first noticed something had shifted. I found myself paying more attention to him than I ever had before, and that realization made me uncomfortable. I kept telling myself I was reading too much into it, that he was just being kind, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about the things he loved. Eventually, he had to fly home, and I remember feeling sad when we hugged goodbye. I told myself that would be the end of it. Instead, we started texting. At first, just checking in, sending memes, making each other playlists, recommending movies. Then it became every day. Then hours-long conversations that would stretch until morning. We talked about our childhoods, our families, insecurities, regrets, things we hadn't really told other people. He opened up to me about his drinking, his depression, the guilt he carried over what happened with Gemma. He told me how much he hated himself for the cheating, for the way he'd handled becoming a father. He said he missed being with his daughter every day. I know a lot of people reading this think I was stupid for hearing him. I agree, but hearing those things made it harder to keep seeing him only as the monster I'd built in my mind. I still knew what he did was wrong. I still knew he had hurt Gemma. But I started seeing him as something more complicated than that. And I realized I was looking forward to hearing from him every single day. That realization scared me. I knew it wasn't normal. They were separated, both seeing other people, but they were still legally married. I was single. I could have talked to anyone, but the only person I wanted to hear from was him. I kept telling myself nothing would ever happen. We were across the country from each other. I should have stopped while I was ahead. I didn't. Over time, the compliments came more often. He told me I'd become his favorite person, that he felt like we had something special, that ever since that night, he couldn't stop thinking about me. Then he admitted it directly. He'd developed feelings for me. He said when he first noticed those feelings, his reaction had been, "What the hell is wrong with me? That's Gemma's little cousin." He said he kept trying to push the thoughts away, that he felt guilty about them. But he told me that if I wasn't Gemma's cousin, he would have wanted to be with me. By then, I had already started feeling the same way. And instead of shutting it down, I told him so. He was still married to my best friend, still the father of my niece. I told him I felt the same way, but that I shouldn't, that we needed to step back. That didn't last long. For months we existed in this gray area, more than friends, not together, talking every night. And then things shifted into something physical. He would get drunk, become more forward, ask for explicit photos. I felt uneasy the first time, but I didn't refuse. And then it became a pattern. He'd drink, be romantic with me, then push things further, then say goodnight. When morning came and he was sober, he went back to being distant and unresponsive. I brought it up. I asked why he became a different person in the mornings. He told me that when he was sober, he remembered who I was, that he remembered Gemma, their daughter. He felt like he was betraying her all over again, even though they were separated. He said, "It's just easier when I'm drunk. The guilt and the shame go away." That hit like a stab in the chest, but I told him I understood, and I continued anyway. I could be smiling, talking to him one moment, then think about Gemma and feel sick. I'd stay up all night with him, then spend the next day listening to Gemma tell me what he'd said to her, hearing other versions of him I never saw firsthand. It felt like I was living two realities at once, one where I genuinely cared about him, and another where I knew exactly who would be hurt if anyone found out. Then came the news. He told me he'd started talking to someone else, that they'd become official. I was dumbfounded. I had no idea he'd been talking to other girls while telling me I was special. I was hurt. But I didn't deserve to be hurt. Gemma was the one who deserved better. I told him I was happy for him and that we should leave it at that. He suggested we could still continue our arrangement. I said no. He apologized. We drifted. Then talked again as friends. Then drifted again. Then he'd get drunk and text me out of nowhere. Flirt all night, disappear the next morning. Until we stopped talking altogether. Then Christmas. Our family had a get-together. The second I saw him, everything I thought I'd put away came rushing back. On the first night, everyone had been drinking, and we were the last ones awake again. I gave him a small gift. Something I'd bought for him back when we were still a fling. He loved it. He hugged me. And then we were kissing. He cupped my face and held me. That moment I told you about at the very beginning. That's when it was. Eventually, we came to our senses. Gemma was asleep in the room right next to us. Even though I wanted to keep going, I knew I couldn't. Nothing beyond kissing happened that night. We went to sleep. The next evening, he had a flight to catch. And he was gone. When he got home, I called him. He told me he loved kissing me, but that he was glad it hadn't gone further, because he knew he would have regretted it. Not just because of Gemma now, but because of his girlfriend, who he said was getting serious. I told him I agreed. That was that. After we hung up, I cried the rest of the night. I cried more over that short-lived fling than I had for any real relationship I'd been in before. It's been a year since we last spoke. I later learned from Gemma that Justin had started talking to his girlfriend in May of 2024, the month right before he started talking to me. I was never special. He just told me what I needed to hear. Meanwhile, his girlfriend has been posting photos of them together,